Welcome back to LaunchPod, where, for now, we're exploring how entrepreneurs are showing resilience and creativity amidst the unforeseen circumstances presented by COVID-19. Today, I'm chatting with the co-founders of Mapinhood, a free navigation app that provides pedestrians, in particular the visually impaired, with personalized routes for safe and convenient trips. Co-founders Arjun Mali and Bin Yu are part of this year's Next AI program, which officially kicked off, albeit remotely, 2 weeks ago. Normally, this would be the time that we at Next Canada would be welcoming them into our office space, but that's going to have to wait a bit. For now, thanks to Zoom, I can still get to know them a bit and share their story. So take a listen and learn about how they set out to create a safer world for the visually impaired and now have an opportunity to help even more people navigate a socially distanced world.
So I thought we would just start by giving you a bit of a chance to talk how you met each other. How did you come to work together?
Yeah, for sure. So Ben and I actually met when we were in university. I was at McMaster in Hamilton and he was at U of T. We met through a mutual friend, and our first meeting was actually at the poker table. But we got on really well. We both came from international backgrounds. So Ben sort of brought up in China and Botswana and then moved to Canada. I was, brought up in India and lived in the UAE and then moved out here as well. We used to talk a lot about geopolitics and business, and we sort of left the conversation a while back saying, hey, if you ever start a business, then give me a call. And I had just moved to Toronto, and Ben had just graduated when I hadn't heard from him in about 8 months, and I got a call. Him begging me come to a bar and have a chat. And I was about to get on a flight that day, actually. I decided, okay, screw it. Let me see the guy. And we started talking a lot about different things. He had an opportunity with the Impact Center here in Toronto. And since I just moved in, I was actually looking for a roommate. So that also happened. So we actually moved in together.
Oh, very cool.
And then we went through the techno program that's offered by the Impact Center. And this was back in 2014. And after that 3-month program, we started the company and started making solutions for people living with vision loss.
Very cool. And, so Ben, from your perspective, what compelled you to reach out to Arjun after 8 months and what was your pitch to him?
I know what my capabilities are. I have an engineering background from U of T. I have a good grasp of coming up with ideas and then actually designing them. But at the time, I had very little knowledge on the business side of things. And when I thought about having a business partner, Arjun was the first person that came to mind, just based on our previous conversations. So it was just a no-brainer. I called him straight away as soon as the opportunity arrived. And the pitch to Arjun at the time was, I didn't even tell him about starting the business. I just basically guilt-tripped him into coming to have a drink with me, even though he was about to get on a flight in a few hours.
Amazing.
And then I pitched to him in person there.
And so it sounded like, this notion of being entrepreneurs was this always something that you respectively knew you wanted to do? And then at what point did you decide to work on this venture full time? Was it pretty quickly after that first beer, or was there quite a bit of a process to say, okay, we're actually doing this?
There was definitely a little bit of a transition period. I think we were both very entrepreneurial even before we got started. I kind of dabbled with side projects through university, custom furniture and stuff like that. I think the techno program was really the catalyst for it all. I at the time just didn't know what was on offer in terms of grants and programs that were out there to kind of enable startups at their very ideation stage. Once we sort of took a crash course and we knew we wanted to impact, our first sort of community that we wanted to impact was the vision loss community. Ben's dad was living with glaucoma at the time and was actively living with vision loss, and my family supports a blind school and orphanage in India. So we sort of started doing some research there. And at the time there was quite a lot of funding for new accessible technology. So we kind of put proposals together and started talking to a lot of people and kind of had this concept for a very early product. It seemed to be resonating with quite a lot of people. And our early partners back in the day were Balance for Blind Adults and Canadian National Institute for the Blind. And and very shortly after the techno program, things sort of came into realization, and the company was started in August of 2014.
August of 2014. Okay. And so looking back on the techno program and that early product you took in, maybe that's a good segue into the venture that you're working on today. Are they one and the same, or has both the problem and that you were trying to solve and the product you're working on significantly evolved? I mean, I imagine since August 2014, there's been a lot of change. So maybe one of you could kind of briefly speak to what you're working on today and how that's evolved over time.
For sure. So actually, go ahead, man.
So so I guess the mission sort of stayed the same overall. When we started investigating into the vision loss space in that August in 2014, we identified three major issues for people living with vision impairment. So one of them was head level obstacle detection, which we addressed with the first product we launched with Immersive, which was called the Buzz Clip. It's a wearable ultrasonic sensor. It detects obstacles, in the user's proximity, and then it warns them on how far they are from the obstacle as they get closer through vibration. So that problem was identified through talking to just lots of potential users, both on the Canada side and then also through Arjun's contacts in India. So we interviewed hundreds of people even before we sat down and started designing the product. And the issue there was that people with white canes or guide dogs are well protected from waist and below, but the issue is you have a lot of things that are over your waist level, and those are often the ones that are causing accidents and potential damages to your most vulnerable areas. That's why we designed the first product to be a sensor. But together with that problem, we also identified two others. One of them was the fact that it's hard to detect elevation drops. So getting to the front of staircases or curbs and things like that, those are usually dangerous spots. And there's currently nothing that really addresses that very well. And we didn't have a solution for that either at the time. And the last thing that we identified was actually navigation, which brings us to the second product that we have right now called Mapinhood. At the time, we also didn't have a viable solution to address this, just because of a series of things. One, our internal engineering capabilities, and then two, just GPS wasn't accurate enough, and we didn't have a good way of actually collecting the data that's relevant. So at our core, the mission still stayed the same, that we want to actually have a positive impact on people living with vision loss. And what Mapinhood does right now, and the issue we're trying to solve, is that fundamentally navigation has never been built for pedestrians. From the time when it was used in the military to when it started getting widespread adoption with civilians, it's always been a focus on cars. And the navigation systems we have today are still heavily focused on cars. It's been getting better and better in terms of map data and also how fast your routes can be generated and how well the routes are generated. But those are all considering that you're traveling like a car. So the difference here is that for cars, it's fixed road networks, and the things that really impact car travels are street signs, one-way street turn restrictions, highways, toll roads, and the most recent addition in the last few years was very accurate traffic data, right, to help you navigate through traffic. But for pedestrian, it's very different because we travel fundamentally differently from cars, and the things that actually impact us are everything physical that you can see, touch, or even things that you can smell on walkable spaces. And these are not things that you currently find on existing mapping applications. And because we're looking at it from the most extreme example, so picture someone that's visually impaired getting the instruction from a navigation app telling them to go 500 meters and turn right. The issue there is that it's great for general directions, but everything in between those 500 meters are things that can potentially trip you or cause you to, have to be extra careful to navigate around. There may be complications through construction site. There's just way too many things that are not addressed.
Yeah, for sure. As I'm listening to you talk, I'm thinking about, how much I take for granted, in the Google Maps experience, for example, because it really is assuming that everyone has their senses about them. right? So I can only imagine how those tools could potentially be improved or a new product introduced to help people with impaired vision.
Absolutely, and that's how we sort of settle down and start designing Mapinhood. And how we're addressing this issue is we're looking at the success that's being done through crowdsourcing, right? So we've made it possible through Mapinhood for people to actually crowdsource information. So anything that's impacted you personally, you can tag onto our app, and once that's verified by another user, this is now live and can start to benefit everyone else. And we designed our routing engine fundamentally different from how existing routing engines or routing algorithms work. And the deviation here is that whereas existing routing focuses on speed, so because in a car you're traveling at high
Right.
speed, so even reroutes has to happen in split seconds, right?
Right.
But for us,
So
pedestrians
just to kind of super simplify, when I think routing engine, I think again just drawing from the Google Maps experience, right? Like they will send you on the route that is the fastest. So there's some kind of engine that is also powering that, right? Am I just to make sure I'm understanding that correctly? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And how we generate routes for you is actually not focusing on giving you things in a speed that's faster than your reaction time, because we walk at a slower pace, but rather taking into account hundreds of different things on sidewalks. Every garbage bin, every staircase, every narrow sidewalk, every low-hanging tree branch, or slippery sidewalks, or anything like that. That's being checked as you start a route with us, and depending on the individual, it takes into account things that are relevant. So, for instance, staircases may have a positive impact if you're looking to go through high-resistant areas for fitness, but it has a very negative impact on accessibility for someone that's on a wheelchair, or for moms pushing strollers, right? So all those things being considered, then we then present you with a route that's the path of least resistance, we may say.
Say a month ago, where were you in terms of your product roadmap? Like, do you have a beta? Do you have customers? Where are you at in terms of growth or milestones?
Sure. So we do have a beta that's actually live, and the beta of Mapinhood was released on February 14th. So it's available to download on both Android and iOS. The data service and sort of coverage is limited in Toronto. You can download it in all of Canada, but you'll really see the richness of the map in downtown Toronto.
Okay.
We have plans to sort of scale that provincially and nationally in the next few months. So we released, and we had a pretty good injection of users in the first month, and then I guess COVID-19 happened, and we've had to sort of dial back a lot of the messaging. So a lot of our messaging earlier was trying to get people out there and either to find amenities or to discover points of interest and things like that. Like we have street murals that are tagged onto the map, and users are able to quickly find them and go straight to them. So we've kind of taken a step back on that, and we're kind of watching what's going on, and in response to what's been happening, we're actually pushing out new features to sort of address one big sort of main strategy that's being adopted right now, which is physical distancing. And I think we have some sort of neat tools that can help with that.
Yeah, I was going to say that's kind of immediately where my head went to, when you were talking about traffic patterns and how that is so common when you're driving a car, but not as common when you're looking at pedestrian traffic. But now more than ever, people are trying to figure out, like, when can I go to the grocery store? What's the best time to go? How do you adhere to physical distancing? So again, hopefully this is temporary, and you can kind of get back to business as usual. But I wonder if there is an opportunity to use Mapinhood as a tool for good, at least in the Toronto core.
Yeah, definitely. And and essentially it is a crowdsourced pedestrian navigation platform that kind of runs off this unique routing engine. And the hope is it's supposed to give users data on everything that's happening on their sidewalks of their city. So it gives them real-time information on crime, lighting conditions, pedestrian accidents, hazards, city amenities, and points of interest.
Mm-hmm.
And in light of what's going on, physical distancing being sort of a main directive, if you think about the sidewalks alone, like the physical distancing requirement is 2 meters. Most sidewalks in the city are narrower than that. So it makes it very difficult to actually practice social distancing, especially when you don't know what current pedestrian foot traffic is like.
Right.
So the kind of couple features that we're building in and releasing almost right away are like an avoid busy streets or crowds setting that gets built into the routing engine, so users can go right into their settings and turn that on. And that just reduces the risk of you encountering or interacting with anyone else when you leave your home for essential work, goods, or supplies. So how we're doing that off the bat is basing it off historic pedestrian foot traffic at intersections. And then we're hoping that with wider adoption of the platform, especially in a concentrated area like Toronto, you can start moving that into live location data. And then with additional sort of optional survey tools, we can kind of better help protect vulnerable communities as well as like track the spread on a more granular level. So as an example, if grocery stores are having lineups outside, there could be a quick survey tool kind of built in to keep users informed that, okay, there's actually a long lineup outside this grocery store at this time.
I love that. That would be so useful, because again, I think everyone's trying to adhere to, the rules as best as possible, but it is really hard to know like what time of day is the best time to go to a grocery store. And then I was thinking, if you get the real-time data, it could be useful for the city of Toronto to crack down on those silly people who are not adhering to social distancing. Anyway, we're not here to workshop your product, but I'm very happy to hear that, you're finding new uses and opportunities to kind of get the data that you need to QA. I am curious, why at this point, in your product roadmap and your experience as co-founders, why NextAI? Why did you initially apply to the program, and what are you hoping to get out of it?
So I can definitely talk about it from a business perspective, and I think Ben can answer, from a technical perspective.
Awesome.
But just given where we're at, so we at the end of the day, we are a consumer app, and we've just released a beta, and it's the first time we're doing this, and we would definitely, need help when it comes to scaling and basically spreading the awareness about the app. And I think that's one. And the second is just access to capital through investors that have, sort of done this before. And I think NextAI sort of offers both those, both of those priorities. They're able to sort of provide a lot of value with respect to that. So that was a critical sort of decision or component for us applying. And we're really glad to be sort of part of the NextAI family now.
Awesome.
And just talking about the technical side of things, as we launched the beta, I think the timing just worked out really well for us in the sense that, we have multiple stages of AI sort of component planned out to get more and more personalization into the navigation itself, right? And we do have, like, our CTO does have a AI background, and I did read a lot of books. I don't have an AI background myself, but just the NextAI program on its own, like, one, it was a great sort of opportunity for me to get up to speed on the current best practices and just some just experience-based sort of tips and tricks as well, right, on things that we need to watch out for as we move forward. And then second part of that is just the commercialization of AI, because as we grow the company more and more, that's going to become a core component of our company. And that's something neither myself or our CTO has in terms of experience. And then just because of the number of companies that has gone through NextAI, like, you guys have seen it all, and just having access to all the experts in the field, it just helps us set a better direction as we move forward.
Great. Yeah. I mean, we've seen it all. We haven't seen a pandemic yet, but here we are. And I think, like, listening to you chat about what you're hoping to get out of the program, especially as it pertains to like commercialization of AI, you're going to have the benefit of getting to know Professor Ajay Agrawal, and Professor Graham Taylor, obviously runs more the technical side of the program, but both of those brains combined, and then having access to our other entrepreneurs who have gone before you, I am confident that you'll get that value out of it. It sounds like you and your teams are being adaptable. It's also okay if it feels really hard, because I know it is. But again, I'm impressed by your resiliency so far. So I don't know if you wanted to end with anything that you're kind of optimistic or looking forward to as you embark on the next AI program.
The only other thing, like myself and Eric, our CTO, is really excited about is reconnecting with the scientists in residence. We already had an introductory call with them. And it happens that Elahi, who was the person that was assigned to us, specializes in the type of data structure that we're currently using. So
Perfect.
Pretty excited to get that going.
Perfect. I'm so happy to hear that. I haven't met him, so I haven't had a chance to meet any of our scientists in residence because everything has happened so quickly. But I'm so excited to meet everybody in person very soon, and I wish you all the luck.
Thanks, Jen. No, and I can't wait to finally connect in person after all this is over, and hopefully have a few drinks with the community.
Definitely. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back with more stories and resources in the coming weeks, so please tune in or share with a friend. At Next, we're really optimistic about the massive impact entrepreneurs will have on our future economy and our ability to enable their continued success by the actions we take now. With LaunchPod, we'll play a small part in supporting entrepreneurs today and every day. Thank you.